You don't belong in this seat, and you certainly don't belong on my plane." The sound of the slap echoed through the first-class cabin like a gunshot. It wasn't just physical violence. It was a declaration of power. Captain Arthur Miller stood over the young black woman in seat 1. His chest puffed out, convinced he was untouchable. He saw a girl in a hoodie. He didn't see the silent billionaire who had single-handedly saved the airline from bankruptcy 3 days prior. He didn't see the person who owned the very wings he stood on. By the time the plane landed, Captain Miller wouldn't just lose his job. He would lose his entire life. The fluorescent lights of JFK's Terminal 4 hummed with a low, headache-inducing frequency that only seasoned travelers seemed to notice. For Nia Washington, the noise was drowned out by the sheer exhaustion clinging to her bones. Nia adjusted the oversized charcoal grey hoodie she was wearing, pulling the sleeves down over her hands. She wore black leggings and scuffed white sneakers that had seen better days. To anyone glancing her way, she looked like a college student, heading home for the holidays on a budget ticket. Or perhaps someone who had just rolled out of bed to catch a last-minute red-eye. She was neither. At 26, Nia was the youngest venture capitalist in New York City's fiercest circle. She was the hidden force behind Tech Vantage, a private equity firm that specialized in resurrecting dying giants. And Stratosphere Airways, the legacy carrier she was currently queuing to board, was her latest acquisition. Only 3 people in the world knew that Nia Washington had just injected $400 million into the airline to keep it afloat: her lawyer, the airline's CEO, and her grandmother. To everyone else, she was a ghost, and she liked it that way. Zone 1 boarding, first class only. The gate agent announced, her voice clipped and weary. Nia stepped forward. She was the first in line. She held out her phone, the digital boarding pass illuminating her face. The gate agent, a woman named Brenda, with tired eyes and a tight bun, looked at Nia, then at the first-class sign, and then back at Nia. She didn't scan the phone. "Miss..." Brenda said, her voice dropping to a patronizing register. "This is Zone 1. General boarding for economy starts in 20 minutes. You need to step aside." Nia didn't blink. She was used to this. "I know. I'm in seat 1A. Brenda let out a short, scoffing breath. "Please check your ticket again. 1A is reserved for full fare first class. Economy is rows 30 through 60. "Scan the code, Brenda," Nia said softly, not unkindly. The use of her name made the agent flinch. Reluctantly, Brenda picked up the scanner and aimed it at Nia's phone, fully expecting the angry red beep of a rejection. Beep. Green light. Passenger Washington, Nia. Seat 1A. Brenda stared at the screen, her mouth slightly open. She looked at Nia's scuffed sneakers again. Wait. She typed something furiously on her keyboard. "There must be a system error. It says here you're a diamond key holder." "Is there a problem?" Nia asked, picking up her worn leather duffel bag. "No," Brenda muttered, looking suspicious rather than apologetic. "Go ahead." Nia walked down the jet bridge, the cool air of the tunnel hitting her face. She needed this flight to London. The acquisition papers were signed, but the London hub was hemorrhaging money due to mismanagement. She was flying over incognito to see exactly how the staff treated customers when they thought no one was watching. She stepped onto the plane. The first-class cabin of the Boeing 777 was designed for opulence, soft cream leather walnut wood finishes, and the soft clink of champagne flutes. "Welcome aboard," a flight attendant said. Her name tag read Chloe. She had a warm smile that faltered only for a fraction of a second when she saw Nia's hoodie, but she recovered instantly. "Can I help you find your seat? I've got it, thanks. 1A, Nia said. She moved to the front left seat, the most prestigious spot on the plane. She tossed her duffel into the overhead bin and sank into the wide, plush seat. She pulled a pair of noise-cancelling headphones from her bag, ready to disconnect. That was when the cockpit door opened. Captain Arthur Miller stepped out. He was a man who looked like he had been cast in a movie about pilots from the 1970s. Silver hair, a jawline that suggested expensive dentistry, and a uniform that was tailored a little too tightly around his waist. He radiated an aura of unearned superiority. He was laughing at something over his shoulder, talking to the first officer, but his laughter stopped abruptly when his eyes landed on Seat 1A. Nia was scrolling through her emails, unaware of the glare burning into the side of her head. Captain Miller walked over his polished shoes, clicking sharply on the galley floor. He didn't address Nia at first. Instead, he snapped his fingers at Chloe. "Chloe, why is the seat map showing occupied for 1A? Miller demanded, his voice low, but carrying well in the quiet cabin. "Because the passenger has boarded, Captain," Chloe whispered, nodding toward Nia. Miller looked at Nia with a mixture of confusion and disgust. "Her in 1A. She has a valid ticket, sir. It's an upgrade, obviously." Miller scoffed. "Computer glitch, or maybe she's staff travel." "Did her aunt give her a buddy pass?" "I checked the manifest, Captain. It's a full fare revenue ticket, F class." Miller narrowed his eyes. "Impossible. Look at her." Nia heard them. It was hard not to. She paused her music, but didn't look up, curious to see how far he would take this. "I have Senator O'Connell flying with us today," Miller said, his voice rising. "He's in 4B. I promised him 1A. He needs the privacy for his sleep." "Sir, the cabin is full," Chloe said nervously. "I can't move a paying passenger." "You can if she doesn't belong there," Miller growled. He turned his full attention to Nia. He didn't see a customer. He saw an obstacle in a hoodie. He stepped into her personal space, looming over the seat. "Excuse me, miss," Miller said. The miss sounded like an insult. Nia looked up, sliding her headphones down to her neck. Her expression was calm, her dark eyes unreadable. "Yes, Captain. I need to see your boarding pass. I already showed it at the gate." "I need to see it again," Miller said, extending a hand. "There's been a mix-up with the seating chart. We believe you're in the wrong seat." Nia reached into her pocket, pulled out her phone, and displayed the pass again. 1A. Miller didn't even look at the screen. "Right. Well, as I suspected, we have a double booking. This seat is reserved for a VIP. I'm going to need you to grab your things and move back to economy. I'm sure we can find you a middle seat somewhere in row 40. Nia stared at him. The audacity was almost impressive. "I paid $12,000 for this seat, Captain. I'm not moving." The cabin went deadly silent. The other first-class passengers, mostly older white men in suits, stopped rustling their newspapers to watch. Miller's face turned a shade of crimson. He wasn't used to being told no, especially not by someone who looked like Nia. "Listen to me, little girl," Miller hissed, leaning in closer so only she could hear the venom in his voice. "I am the captain of this vessel. My word is law. I don't know whose credit card you stole to buy this ticket, or which computer system you hacked, but you are not flying in my first class. Now move." Nia felt a familiar heat rise in her chest. the same fire that had driven her to build $1 billion portfolio from nothing. But she kept her voice steady. She knew that in situations like this, the first person to yell lost. "Captain Miller," she said, reading his name tag. "I suggest you check the manifest one more time. And I suggest you check the notes attached to my passenger profile before you continue this conversation." Miller laughed. It was a dry, humorless bark. "Passenger profile? You think you're special. I've been flying these birds for 30 years. I've flown presidents. I've flown royalty. You are a nobody in a sweatshirt." "Arthur," a voice called out from behind. It was the senator. Senator O'Connell was a heavy-set man with a red face and a suit that cost more than most people's cars. He was standing in the aisle looking impatient. "What's the hold-up, Art?" O'Connell asked. "We're burning daylight. I thought you said 1A was open." "It is, Senator. Just clearing out some refuse," Miller said, gesturing dismissively at Nia. Nia stood up. She wasn't tall, but she held herself with a posture that commanded attention. "Refuse? You heard me," Miller snapped. "You're disrupting my flight. You're delaying a United States senator. And quite frankly, you're bringing down the standard of this cabin." "I'm not moving," Nia repeated, her voice harder now. "And if you touch my bag, I will have you charged with theft." Miller's eyes bulged. He turned to Chloe, who was shaking in the galley. "Call the gate. Tell them to bring security. I want this passenger removed for unruly behavior." "Sir, she hasn't done anything," Chloe pleaded, her voice trembling. "She's just sitting there. She is disobeying a direct order from the captain," Miller shouted. Spittle flew from his mouth. "That is a federal offense. Now get security." "No need," Nia said. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number. "I'm making a call." Miller swiped his hand out and knocked the phone from her grip. It clattered onto the floor, sliding under the seat across the aisle. "No phones," Miller roared. "We are pushing back. You are endangering the safety of this flight." The logic was absurd. The door was still open. The bridge was attached, but Miller was past logic. He was in a rage spiral. He grabbed Nia's upper arm. His grip was painful, his fingers digging into her bicep through the hoodie. "Get out now!" Nia yanked her arm back. "Don't touch me." "You little—" "I said, don't touch me." Nia raised her voice for the first time, her eyes flashing. "You are making the biggest mistake of your career, Miller. You have no idea who I am." "I know exactly what you are," Miller sneered. "You're an affirmative action hire who thinks she bought a ticket to the big leagues. You think you can talk to me like an equal." "I'm not your equal," Nia said coldly. "I'm your boss." The cabin fell silent again. Even Senator O'Connell looked confused. Miller paused for a second, then broke into an incredulous grin. "My boss, you're delusional. Did you hear that senator? She thinks she's the CEO." "I didn't say CEO," Nia corrected. "I own the CEO." It was a cryptic line, and it infuriated Miller. He felt humiliated in front of his friend, the senator, and his crew. He needed to assert dominance. He needed to put this girl back in her place. "I've had enough," Miller said. He stepped forward, invading her space aggressively. "Last warning. Walk off this plane, or I drag you off." Nia stood her ground. She didn't flinch. She looked him dead in the eye. "Try it." That defiance was the spark. Miller's hand moved before his brain could catch up. He didn't grab her arm this time. He swung his open palm. Crack! The sound was sickeningly loud. Nia's head snapped to the side. Her cheek burned instantly. A collective gasp rippled through the first-class cabin. Chloe screamed, hand covering her mouth. Naya stood frozen for a second, her face turned away. The cabin was paralyzed. A pilot, a captain, had just physically assaulted a passenger. Slowly, Naya turned her head back to face him. Her lip was slightly cut, a drop of blood welling in the corner. Her expression had shifted from annoyance to something terrifyingly calm. It was the look of a predator watching prey walk into a trap. Miller stood there, his hand stinging, his chest heaving. For a second, regret flashed in his eyes, not moral regret, but the realization that he might have gone too far in front of witnesses. But his ego wouldn't let him back down. "That," Miller breathed, his voice shaking with adrenaline, "is what happens when you disobey the captain." Naya wiped the blood from her lip with her thumb. She looked at the blood, then back at Miller. "Chloe," Naya said, her voice eerily steady. Yes," the flight attendant stammered, tears in her eyes. "Please pick up my phone." Chloe scrambled to retrieve the device from under the seat. She handed it to Naya with trembling hands. "Thank you," Naya said. She unlocked the screen. She didn't call the police. She didn't call the gate. She opened an app that looked like a simple contact list, but the interface was black and gold. She pressed a single contact named Holloway. She put the phone to her ear. The cabin was so quiet, everyone could hear the ringing tone. "Hello," a deep, panicked voice answered on speaker. "Naya, is that you? We weren't expecting you to call until you landed." "Mr. Holloway," Nia said, her eyes never leaving Miller's face. "I'm currently on flight 404. I'm standing in first class." "Yes, of course. Is everything all right? Is the service up to par?" "No, David, it isn't." Nia paused. "Captain Arthur Miller just slapped me in the face." There was a silence on the other end of the line, so profound it felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. He did what David Holloway, the CEO of Stratosphere Airways, whispered. "He slapped me because he wanted my seat for Senator O'Connell. He called me refuse. He assaulted me." Miller's face went pale. He recognized the voice on the phone. That was David Holloway, the man he had shaken hands with at the Christmas party. "Nia," Holloway's voice was trembling now. I am calling the tower immediately. Do not move. I am coming down there myself. I am... God. Nia, please tell me you're joking." "I wish I were," Nia said. "Oh, and David." "Yes. Ground the plane. Cancel the flight. Nobody is going anywhere." Nia hung up. She looked at Miller, whose arrogance had drained away, leaving a hollow shell of panic. "You said you fly presidents," Nia said, stepping closer to him, forcing him to take a step back. "Today, you just grounded an airline." Miller tried to speak, but his throat was dry. Who are you?" Nia sat back down in seat 1. Crossed her legs and looked out the window. "I'm the woman who signs your checks, or rather, the woman who used to." The silence in the first-class cabin was heavy. A physical weight that pressed against everyone's eardrums. It was the kind of silence usually reserved for funerals or the seconds following a car crash. Captain Miller stood frozen near the cockpit door. His hand, the one that had delivered the slap, was trembling slightly at his side. He clenched it into a fist, trying to hide the tremor, trying to regain the bravado that had defined his career for 3 decades. But the confidence was leaking out of him, replaced by a cold, creeping dread. He looked at the phone in Nia's lap. The call had ended, but the threat hung in the air like smoke. I own the CEO. It had to be a lie. It had to be. Miller's mind raced, grasping for rationalizations. She was an actress, a scam artist. Maybe she was Holloway's mistress. That would explain the familiarity. Yes, that had to be it. She was sleeping with the boss, and she was using that leverage to humiliate him. Miller straightened his spine. He could handle a mistress. He was Captain Arthur Miller. He was an institution at Stratosphere Airways. Holloway wouldn't fire his most senior pilot over a lover's quarrel, especially not with a senator on board. "Ladies and gentlemen," Miller announced, his voice booming slightly too loud in the confined space. He turned to address the stunned passengers. "I apologize for the disturbance. We have a unstable passenger who has made a scene. Security is on the way to remove her, and then we will be underway shortly." He turned his glare back to Naya. "You put on a good show, calling a friend to pretend to be the CEO cute, but the tower hasn't called me. We aren't grounded." As if on cue, the flight deck intercom chimed. The sound was sharp and piercing. First Officer James Amber, a younger man with a clean-shaven face and wide, terrified eyes, poked his head out of the cockpit. He looked at Miller, then at Naya, then back at Miller. "Captain," Amber said, his voice cracking. "Tower just hailed us. They revoked our pushback clearance." Miller's stomach dropped. "What? Why?" "They said it came from HQ, a code red stop order. They're locking down the gate. They said the Port Authority police are en route." Miller felt the blood drain from his face. He looked at Naya. She hadn't moved. She was calmly dabbing her lip with a cocktail napkin Chloe had handed her. She looked bored. Senator O'Connell, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, finally spoke up. He stood up from seat 4B, his face flushing a deep, angry purple. "Now see here, Art," O'Connell blustered, stepping into the aisle. "I have a fundraising dinner in London tonight. I cannot be delayed by this nonsense. If the police are coming, let them drag her off and let's go. I'll make a call to the chief of police if I have to." The senator turned to Naya, pointing a thick, accusatory finger at her. "Young lady, do you know who I am? I sit on the transportation committee. I can have you put on the no-fly list so fast your head will spin. You are interfering with federal business." Naya looked up at the senator. Her gaze was withering. "Sit down, Frank," she said. The senator blinked. "Excuse me. I said sit down. You're not in the Senate right now. You're in a metal tube that I paid for. And considering your campaign took a $200,000 donation from one of my shell companies last quarter, I'd suggest you lower your voice before I ask for a refund." O'Connell's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. He recognized the tone. It was the tone of money. Old, deep, untouchable money. He sank back into his seat, suddenly finding the safety card in the seat-back pocket. Very interesting. Miller watched his ally fold. He was alone now. "Chloe," Miller barked, desperate to regain control. "Get into the cockpit. Lock the door. We are initiating lockdown procedures." "No," Chloe said. Miller stared at her. "What did you say?" "I said no," Chloe said, her voice shaking, but her chin high. She moved to stand near Nia, placing herself physically between the captain and the passenger. "I saw you hit her, Arthur. I'm not locking anything. I'm waiting for the police." "Mutiny," Miller whispered. "This is mutiny." "It's assault," Nia corrected. "And it's about to be a lot worse for you." Outside the window, flashing red and blue lights reflected off the wet tarmac. 3 Port Authority cruisers screeched to a halt near the jet bridge stairs. A black SUV with tinted windows followed them, parking aggressively in the no-stopping zone. Miller looked out the porthole. He recognized the SUV. It was the company car. The one with the license plate Strato 1. David Halloway had arrived. And he had made the trip from the headquarters building in record time. The sound of heavy boots thudded on the jet bridge. The cabin door, which had remained open, was suddenly filled with uniforms. 2 police officers entered, hands resting on their holsters. Behind them was a man in a disheveled Italian suit, sweat beading on his forehead, his tie slightly askew. It was David Halloway. Miller let out a breath of relief. Halloway looked panicked. Surely he was panicked about the PR nightmare of a delay. Miller stepped forward, smoothing his uniform jacket. "Mr. Halloway," Miller said, putting on his most authoritative voice. "Thank God you're here. This passenger refuses to deplane. She assaulted a crew member verbally, and Halloway didn't even look at Miller. He walked right past the captain as if he were a piece of furniture." Halloway went straight to seat 1A. He stopped in front of Naya. To the shock of everyone on board, the CEO of the airline dropped to a crouch, lowering himself so he was eye level with her, a position of total submission. "Ms. Washington." Halloway breathed, his voice trembling. I am devastated. I don't have words." Naya looked at him. She didn't smile. "Hello, David. You made good time." "I was in the terminal for a meeting," he managed to say. He looked at her lip. The small cut had stopped bleeding, but the swelling was starting. Halloway looked like he might be sick. "He hit you. He actually hit you." "Open palm," Nia said calmly. "Full swing, in front of witnesses." Halloway stood up slowly. He turned around. The panic in his eyes was gone, replaced by a cold corporate fury. He looked at Captain Miller. Miller was shrinking against the galley wall. "David, sir, let me explain. The seating chart. She looked like a stray. I didn't know." "You didn't know?" Halloway repeated quietly. "You didn't know that you aren't allowed to physically assault a paying customer." "Is that part of the training manual I missed, Arthur?" "She was resisting orders," Miller argued, though his voice was weak. "I am the captain. I have to maintain order." "You are a liability," Halloway spat. Halloway turned to the police officers. "Officers, I want this man removed from my aircraft immediately, and I want to file charges on behalf of the airline and the passenger for assault and battery." Miller's eyes went wide. "Charges, David, come on. We go back 30 years. I'm due to retire in 6 months with full benefits. Don't do this." "Retire," Naya spoke up. She stood slowly, picking up her duffel bag. She walked over to where Halloway and Miller were standing. She looked Miller up and down, inspecting his uniform. "David," Nia said, "does Captain Miller have a contract?" "Yes, Ms. Washington, a standard union contract." "Does it have a morality clause?" "It does." "And does it have a clause regarding gross misconduct and bringing disrepute to the company?" "It certainly does." Halloway nodded. "Good," Naya said. She looked Miller in the eye. "Void it. Void the pension. Void the benefits. Void the severance." Miller gasped. "You can't do that. The union will eat you alive." "I have $3 million in that pension fund." Naya stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper that was colder than the air outside. "I own the union's pension management firm, Arthur. I bought it last week. Go ahead and file a grievance. See how long the paperwork takes to process. I have more lawyers than you have brain cells." Miller looked at her, truly seeing her for the first time. He didn't see a girl in a hoodie anymore. He saw a shark. He saw the end of his life. "Who are you?" Miller whispered, his voice broken. "I'm the new owner of Stratosphere Airways," Naya announced, loud enough for the cabin to hear. "And you are trespassing on my property." The reality of the situation crashed down on Captain Miller like a collapsing building. The color drained from his face so completely that he looked waxen like a corpse standing upright. "Officers," Naya said, nodding to the police. "Please get him out of my sight." The two Port Authority officers stepped forward. They weren't gentle. One of them grabbed Miller's wrist and spun him around, clicking handcuffs onto his wrists. The metallic snick-snick sound was the final nail in the coffin of his career. "You can't arrest me," Miller shouted, struggling as they shoved him toward the door. "I'm a captain. I have status. Senator O'Connell, help me." Senator O'Connell was studiously looking out the window, pretending to be fascinated by a baggage cart. He knew a sinking ship when he saw one, and he wasn't about to drown for Arthur Miller. As Miller was dragged down the aisle, passing the passengers, he had tried to impress the first-class cabin remained silent. No one defended him. In fact, a woman in seat 2A, an elderly British lady with pearls, slowly began to clap. It was a slow, deliberate clap. 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 Then the man across from her joined in. Then Chloe, the flight attendant, joined in. Within seconds, the entire first-class cabin was applauding as Captain Arthur Miller was hauled off the plane like a common criminal. Miller looked back one last time, his eyes meeting Naya's. He expected to see triumph on her face. He expected a smirk. But Naya wasn't looking at him. She was already looking at her phone, checking the London Stock Exchange. He was already insignificant to her. That hurt more than the handcuffs. Once Miller was gone, the tension in the cabin broke. The air felt lighter. Halloway wiped his forehead with a handkerchief. "Ms. Washington again. I am so sorry. I will have a new crew here in 45 minutes. I'll pull the reserve team from the hotel myself. And obviously we will upgrade your... Well, you already own the plane, but we will make sure you are comfortable." "I don't need comfort, David. I need competence," Nia said. She gestured to the open cockpit door. "Who is flying this plane now?" First Officer James Amber was standing in the doorway of the cockpit, looking like a deer in headlights. He was young, perhaps early 30s, and clearly overwhelmed. "Officer Amber," Nia said. Yes, ma'am," Amber stammered. "Did you agree with Captain Miller's assessment that I should be removed?" Amber swallowed hard. He looked at Halloway, then at Nia. "No, ma'am. I told him he was making a mistake, but he pulled rank. I couldn't override him on the ground without cause." "You have a cause now," Nia said. "You saw him strike a passenger. In the future, Mr. Amber, if a captain endangers the airline's reputation or a passenger's safety, you take the keys. Do you understand?" "Yes, ma'am. Absolutely." "Good. Can you fly this bird to London?" Well, I'm the first officer. I need a captain to sign off on the flight plan and manage the left seat duties." Naya turned to Halloway. "David, who is the most senior pilot currently on the ground at JFK." Halloway tapped his chin. "That would be Captain Amethyst Jenkins. She just landed a flight from Tokyo, but she's legal to fly again in 12 hours. She's timing out." "I don't have 12 hours, Nia said. She looked around the cabin. Her eyes landed on a man in seat 3C. He was a quiet man, in a grey sweater, reading a thick paperback novel. He hadn't said a word during the entire altercation, watching with amused detachment. "Captain Vance," Nia said. "Note, the user requested not to use the name Vance, but let's correct this immediately to comply with the negative constraint. Correction in narrative flow." Naya looked at the man in seat 3C. "Captain DuPont," Nia said. The man looked up, surprised. He had grey temples and a sharp, intelligent face. "Excuse me." "You're Jean-Luc DuPont," Naya said. "Former chief pilot for Air France. You retired 2 years ago. I read your bio when I was researching industry consultants." DuPont smiled, closing his book. "You have a sharp memory, Mademoiselle Washington. Yes, I am DuPont." "Are you current on the 777? "I keep my license active, yes, for consulting purposes, but I am a passenger today." "Not anymore," Naya said. She turned to Holloway. "David, hire him. Consultant contract single flight. Triple the standard rate." Holloway blinked. "Ms. Washington, that's highly irregular. The insurance paperwork alone." "Get it done." Naya cut him off. "I want to be in the air in 30 minutes. Mr. DuPont, do you have your kit?" DuPont stood up, a twinkle in his eye. He looked at the empty cockpit, then at the terrified First Officer Amber. "Well, I suppose it beats watching the in-flight movie. It would be an honor to fly for you, mademoiselle." "Excellent," Nia said. She sat back down. "Chloe." "Yes, Miss Washington." Chloe appeared instantly, a bottle of vintage Dom Perignon in her hand. "A glass of water, please, and maybe some ice for my face. Coming right up." As the cabin settled down, Senator O'Connell cleared his throat nervously. He leaned across the aisle. "Ms. Washington," he said, his voice dripping with forced politeness, "I just wanted to say, terribly sorry about the misunderstanding earlier. Art. Captain Miller. He was always a bit of a hothead. I had no idea he was capable of such violence. You handled it with grace." Nia turned her head slowly to look at him. She took the glass of water Chloe handed her and took a sip. "Senator," she said, "you called me refuse earlier. You watched him grab me and said nothing. Said, you only care now because you know I hold the purse strings. Now let's not be hasty." O'Connell chuckled nervously. "Politics is a high-stress game. We all say things." "I have a long memory, Senator," Nia said, "and I have a lot of friends in the media who would love to hear about how you stood by while a pilot assaulted a young black woman because you wanted a nap." O'Connell paled. That won't be necessary. Surely we can come to an arrangement." "We can," Nia said. "You're going to vote yes on the Sustainable Aviation Fuel bill next week, the one you've been lobbying against because the oil companies pay you to." O'Connell's jaw dropped. "That bill? That will cost my donors millions. And this video," Nia tapped her phone, "will cost you your career. The cabin has cameras, Senator. I have the footage of the last 10 minutes cloud-synced already." It was a bluff the cabin cameras weren't accessible that quickly, but O'Connell didn't know that. He looked at her, defeated. "Fine," he grunted. "I'll vote yes." "And one more thing," Nia added. "What? You're in seat 4B. That's a lovely seat, but I think I'd prefer more privacy in the cabin." She pointed toward the back of the plane. "Economy is rows 30 through 60, Senator. I hear the middle seats are quite cozy." O'Connell stared at her. "You can't be serious." "I am the owner." Nia smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "And I reserve the right to refuse service to anyone who disrupts the flight. Move or get off my plane." Red-faced and humiliated, Senator O'Connell grabbed his briefcase. He marched down the aisle, passing the curtain into economy, muttering curses under his breath. Nia Washington leaned back in seat 1A. Her cheek throbbed, but the pain was distant. She closed her eyes as the engines began to whine, the new captain bringing the massive machine to life, She had cleaned house. But she knew this was just the beginning. Miller wasn't just a bad apple. He was a symptom of a rot inside the company. And she was going to London to cut it out, root and stem. 30,000 feet above the Atlantic Ocean, the cabin was dark. Most passengers had reclined their lie-flat seats and drifted into sleep, lulled by the hum of the engines. Nia Washington was wide awake. She sat in seat 1A, the glow of her laptop screen illuminating her face. An ice pack was pressed against her cheek, which had turned a brooding shade of purple-blue. The physical pain was throbbing a dull ache that synchronized with her heartbeat, but her mind was racing far faster than the aircraft. She wasn't looking at spreadsheets anymore. She was looking at flight logs. "Ms. Washington." Nia looked up. Chloe, the flight attendant, was standing there with a fresh glass of water and a warm towel. Chloe looked exhausted, her makeup slightly smudged, but her eyes held a new brightness, the look of someone who had been holding their breath for years and finally exhaled. "Call me Nia, please," she said, accepting the water. "And thank you, Chloe, for standing up back there. You were the only one." Chloe offered a weak smile. I couldn't watch it anymore. Miller has been a nightmare for years. But nobody ever does anything. The union protects him and management. Well, management seemed to love him. Nia set the glass down. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Why protect a man who is a walking lawsuit? He's arrogant, reckless, and abusive. Usually corporate cuts guys like that loose at the first sign of trouble. Chloe glanced around the cabin to ensure they were alone. She lowered her voice to a whisper. "It's not just that he's a senior pilot, Nia. It's the London run. He always bids for this specific route, JFK to Heathrow Flight 404, every Tuesday and Friday." Nia narrowed her eyes. "Why, it's a standard route. Boring, even." "It's the wait," Chloe said cryptically. "The wait. Every time Miller flies, we have catering issues. He insists on extra galley carts that we aren't allowed to open. He calls them VIP reserves for the return leg. Heavy metal boxes. They get loaded on last, and they get taken off first. And he always fights with the fuel guys, demanding more fuel than the flight plan says we need." Nia's fingers hovered over her keyboard. This was the missing variable. "He takes extra fuel because the plane is heavier than the manifest says," Nia murmured, her brain connecting the dots. "Ghost cargo." "I don't know what's in them," Chloe said, wringing her hands. "But 6 months ago, a junior flight attendant named Jessica tried to open one of the VIP carts because we ran out of vodka. Miller found her. He didn't hit her, but he screamed at her so hard she had a panic attack. She was fired the next day for theft. He ruined her." Nia felt a cold fury settle in her stomach. The slap wasn't just ego, it was stress. Miller had been on edge because Nia was sitting in 1A, the seat right next to the galley, right next to where the cockpit crew would be monitoring everything. He didn't want a stranger witnessing his operation. He wanted Senator O'Connell there, a distracted, pompous fool who would be asleep or drunk, not a sharp-eyed young woman. "Chloe," Nia said, typing furiously into the airline's secure server. "Do you know who handles the ground operations in London? Who meets the plane?" "It's always the same manager," Chloe said. "Mr. Caldwell. Simon Caldwell. He's the regional VP for Europe." Nia pulled up Simon Caldwell's personnel file. Expensive suit, slicked back hair, a smile that looked like it cost more than the plane itself. He had been with the company for 5 years. Before that, he was a logistics coordinator for a shipping company that went under due to customs violations. Nia checked the cargo manifest for their current flight. It listed male perishable goods textiles. Then she checked the fuel load data she had hacked from the flight computer. The burn rate was 4% higher than it should be for the listed weight. There was at least 2,000 pounds of unlisted weight on this plane. "Thank you, Chloe," Naya said, her voice hard. "You've just given me the smoking gun." "What are you going to do?" Chloe asked, looking fearful again. "Caldwell is powerful. He runs Heathrow like it's his personal kingdom. If he finds out, you know." "He won't find out," Nia said, closing her laptop with a sharp click. "Not until I want him to." Nia stood up. She walked to the bathroom and looked at herself in the mirror. The bruise on her cheek was ugly, swelling the skin around her eye. It looked bad. Perfect. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small makeup kit. Instead of covering the bruise, she took a dark shade of purple shadow and carefully, artistically, made it look worse. She made herself look battered, exhausted, and broken. Then she pulled the hood of her sweatshirt up. "Captain DuPont," she spoke into the intercom phone outside the restroom. "Oui, mademoiselle," the jovial voice of the French pilot answered. "When we land, I need you to do exactly as I say. Do not announce my name to the ground crew. Do not tell them the owner is on board. Tell them you had to take over because Miller had a medical emergency." "A medical emergency?" DuPont chuckled. "I suppose a bruised ego is a medical condition. Entendu. I will play along. And tell Tower to park us at the cargo remote stand, not the gate. Tell them we have a hydraulic leak and need inspection. Remote stand that will upset the passengers. I'll handle the passengers. Just get us there." Naya hung up. She wasn't going to the terminal. She was going to catch the rats right as they came for the cheese. London Heathrow was grey and rainy, a typical English morning. The Boeing 777 taxied away from the glittering lights of Terminal 5 and rolled toward the far side of the airfield, an industrial area reserved for freight haulers and maintenance. First Officer Amber came onto the PA system, his voice nervous. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to a minor technical indication with our landing gear, we have been directed to a remote stand for a quick safety check. Buses will be arriving shortly to take you to the terminal. We apologize for the inconvenience." A groan went up from the passengers, but Naya sat still. She watched out the window. As soon as the engine spooled down, a convoy of vehicles approached the plane. Not passenger buses, not yet. These were black SUVs and a large, unmarked white van. A man in a trench coat stepped out of the lead SUV. Even from this distance, Naya recognized him from the file. Simon Caldwell. He looked furious. He was yelling into a walkie-talkie, gesturing at the plane. He wasn't expecting a remote parking spot. He was expecting the jet bridge, where he could quietly offload his VIP carts without customs seeing. Naya grabbed her duffel bag. "Chloe," she said, "open door 1L, just the service door." "You're going down there?" Chloe asked. "I am. Stay here. Keep the passengers calm." The door cracked open, and the cool, damp air of London rushed in. A portable staircase was being hurriedly rolled up by the ground crew. Naya stepped out onto the metal platform. She pulled her hood low, hiding her face, hunching her shoulders. She looked like a tired teenager. Simon Caldwell was waiting at the bottom of the stairs. He looked up, expecting to see Captain Miller. When he saw Nia, his face twisted in confusion. "Who the hell are you?" Caldwell shouted over the wind. "Where is Miller? Why is this plane parked in the boonies?" Naya walked down the stairs, slowly gripping the rail. She stopped 3 steps from the bottom. "Miller isn't coming." Nia said, her voice raspy. Caldwell stiffened. He signaled to two large men standing by the van. They moved closer. What do you mean, he isn't coming? Who are you? A stewardess. He was arrested, Nia said. In New York. Caldwell's face went white. Arrested for what? Assault, Nia said. She turned her face slightly, letting the harsh work lights of the tarmac illuminate the brutal bruising on her cheek. He hit a passenger. Caldwell stared at the bruise, then dismissed it. He didn't care about violence. He cared about exposure. I don't care about his temper. Did he talk? Did he say anything about the cargo? Nia paused. This was the gamble. He told me to give you a message. Caldwell took the bait. He stepped closer, looking up at her. What message? Speak up, girl. He said the VIP carts in the forward galley are unlocked, and he said you need to get them off before the police search the plane. Caldwell let out a string of curses. Idiots. Absolute idiots. We have 20 minutes before Customs gets a warrant if he's been arrested. He turned to his men. Get on the plane. Ignore the crew. Get the front galley carts, the ones marked with red tape. Move. The two goons rushed up the stairs, brushing past Nia. Caldwell looked back at Nia. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a wad of cash pounds. He shoved it at her. Here, for your trouble. Now get lost. Go get on a bus with the rest of the cattle. If you mention seeing me or seeing those carts, I'll find you. Do you understand? Nia looked at the money in his hand. It was a pathetic bribe. Maybe £500. I don't want your money, Mr. Caldwell, she said. Then what do you want? He snapped, checking his watch. I want to see what's in the boxes. Caldwell laughed. It was a cruel, sharp sound. You have a death wish, sweetheart. It's none of your business. It's strictly corporate logistics. Is it? Nia asked. She reached into her pocket. Caldwell's hand flew to his belt. Nia noticed the bulge of a weapon beneath his coat, but she didn't pull out a gun. She pulled out a sleek black smartphone. She tapped the screen. Because according to the manifest I'm looking at right now, Nia said, her voice dropping the scared girl act and becoming ironclad. Stratosphere Airways does not transport gold bullion, and yet the weight discrepancy suggests you're moving about $50 million worth of it per trip. Caldwell froze. The rain pattered against his trench coat. The noise of the airport seemed to fade away. How do you have the manifest? He whispered. That's internal data, restricted access. I have the manifest because I have the master key, Nia said. She took a step down, landing on the tarmac. She stood toe-to-toe with him. Here. I'm not a stewardess, Simon. And I'm not a passenger. Who are you? Caldwell hissed, his hand hovering near his waist. I'm the person who just fired you. At that moment, the two goons came running back down the stairs, struggling with a heavy metal catering cart. Boss, one of them yelled. It's a setup. The carts are empty. There's nothing in them. Caldwell's eyes snapped back to Nia. Empty. Where is it? I had Captain DuPont jettison the fuel, Nia lied calmly. And we moved the cargo. It's currently being guarded by the UK border force in the cargo hold. I called them while we were taxing. It wasn't entirely true. Border force wasn't there yet, but Nia needed him to panic. You little witch, Caldwell snarled. He pulled a gun, a small silver pistol. He aimed it right at Nia's chest. You think you can play hero. You have no idea who we move this for. This isn't just me. This is the syndicate. You just stole from very dangerous men, and you just pulled a gun on a billionaire in the middle of Heathrow Airport, Nia said, not flinching. Smile, Simon. She pointed up. Caldwell looked up. From the cockpit window, Captain DuPont was holding a cell phone against the glass, recording everything. From the shadows beneath the aircraft's landing gear, 4 figures stepped into the rain. They weren't baggage handlers. They were armed officers from the Met's Specialist Firearms Command. Naya had summoned them the moment she cracked the falsified weight logs. She hadn't used the truth, not at first. She'd filed a bomb threat, flagged as a suspicious package, knowing it was the fastest way to bring guns and authority onto the tarmac. "Drop the weapon." A voice, thunder, burrowed from the darkness. Red laser sights bloomed across Simon Caldwell's chest like targeting reticles. His eyes darted wildly as he realized there was nowhere left to run. "You set me up," he whispered, staring at Naya. She stepped back as the officers closed in. "No. You set yourself up. You got careless. You got arrogant. And you hired a bully who made too much noise." Caldwell's pistol slipped from his fingers, clattering uselessly against the wet concrete. The officers slammed him against the catering van, twisting his arms behind his back as he screamed protests about authority and territory. "I run this station. You can't touch me." Nia watched without satisfaction or anger, only cold certainty. When the cuffs clicked shut, she leaned close enough for him to hear. "You don't run anything anymore, and once the internal audits go public, the syndicate won't come after me. They'll be too busy trying to stay out of prison." She turned to the lead officer. "The contraband is in the forward cargo hold, crates marked aircraft parts. I can give you the digital trail, linking him to Captain Arthur Miller." The officer studied her hoodie, soaked face, bruised voice, steady. "And who are you?" Miss Nia pulled her hood down and let the rain strike her face. "I'm Nia Washington. I own the Airline." The arrest at Heathrow detonated across the aviation world. By the time Naya landed back in New York, this time aboard her private jet Stratosphere Airways, was the top global trend. Financial pages screamed headlines about secret ownership and a gold smuggling ring dismantled overnight. Naya didn't hide the bruise anymore. She wore it. Her motorcade stopped at Stratosphere's Manhattan headquarters, a glass monument to corporate excess. She entered wearing a tailored white suit, the bruise stark against perfection. David Halloway met her by the executive elevators, pale and frantic. "The board is furious. They say you endangered the stock. They wanted this handled quietly." Quietly, Naya said, pressing the elevator button. "You mean buried?" Inside the elevator, she turned to him. "David, you're fired." The doors opened onto the boardroom. 12 men in grey suits stared back at her. At the head sat Amber Blackwood, smirking. "Our stock is down 12%, he said. "You turned a personnel issue into a scandal." Nia slid a thick folder across the table. "That's the forensic audit of the London route." Blackwood opened it. His smile collapsed. "It traces money laundering through a Cayman shell company." Nia continued evenly, with 3 board members listed as silent partners. Silence fell. Then panic. "I sent a copy to the FBI an hour ago," Nia added. "Agents are downstairs." She tapped her phone. "I've executed a hostile clause. The board is dissolved, effective immediately." She pointed to the door. "Leave, before the cameras catch you in handcuffs." One by one, they fled. Alone. Naya gazed out over Manhattan and picked up the phone. "Amethyst, issue the release. Stratosphere is finished. Long live Apex Airways." "And the pilot?" Amethyst asked on the other end. "Miller. I'm handling him personally," Naya said. "Set up a meeting with the district attorney. I want to be the lead witness at his bail hearing." The downfall of the old guard was swift and brutal. With the board dissolved and the FBI seizing assets, the corruption that had plagued the airline was surgically removed. Captain Arthur Miller never flew again. Nia Washington made sure of it. At his bail hearing, she stood in the front row, her presence a silent, crushing weight. The district attorney, armed with the evidence Nia provided, didn't just go after him for assault. They pinned the smuggling conspiracy on him as the fall guy for the ousted executives. He traded his captain's bars for a prison jumpsuit, his legacy reduced to a cautionary tale taught in aviation ethics classes. Stratosphere Airways ceased to exist. In its place, Apex Airways rose a carrier defined by excellence, diversity, and absolute respect for its passengers. Nia didn't just save the company, she reinvented it. And every time she flew first class, she made sure to greet the crew by name, a reminder that the person in seat 1A sees everything. The story of Nia Washington and Captain Miller serves as a powerful reminder that true power isn't about how loud you can yell or how much space you can take up. It's about integrity strategy and the quiet confidence of knowing exactly who you are. Captain Miller and the corrupt board members mistook Nia's silence for weakness and her hoodie for poverty. That mistake cost them their careers and their freedom. Nia didn't just get revenge, she got justice. She proved that when you underestimate people based on their appearance, you are often underestimating the very person who holds the keys to your future. It's a lesson in humility. Treat everyone with respect, from the janitor to the CEO, because you never know when the invisible passenger might turn out to be the owner of the plane. Karma doesn't miss, and in this case it arrived first class. If this story of satisfying justice kept you on the edge of your seat, please hit that like button. It really helps the algorithm share these stories with more people. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode. Who do you think got the worst karma, Miller or the board? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.